Mm.
Oh, we are here in December 2024, and we are going to be wrapping up this incredible year full of ups and downs and ins and outs uh, by talking with a dear friend, Shelley Ostroff, and a new friend, Uma Dinsmore-Tuli. And this is our Infinite Wisdom series. And we are going to be actually speaking of how we will finish and mostly importantly, begin 2025. And we're going to do it as I have only done for, this will be my fourth year, but Shelley has done for 7 previous years. We are going to be doing this on the vibration of rest. Okay, so we are coming together right now to talk about the 7 days of rest and to talk about how these two lovely ladies came together, what brought them together, and why it's important to this conversation. So, how should we begin? Shelley, do you want to tell me how you met Uma and how this all came together to begin with?
Mm. I'd love to. So, greetings, everybody. And this is a story of rest and how rest weaves us into right relationship. Over the last 7 years, as Hope said, myself and my partner Jan have been hosting a global event called 7 Days of Rest. And each year has had a different theme. And this event was inspired by a very powerful vision where Mother Earth came to me and in 2017 and said she was calling for 7 days of rest. And I was shown that I needed to create a global field, a global community who would hold the essence, the presence of rest for 7 days as a foundation for our collective healing. And over the next, after that event, that first event, I was shown that we needed to do this for 7 years. The 7 years ended in January 2024. We always began the year with that as a way of seeding the new year with this intention and a global field of prayer and healing where people around the world would offer different gifts to the larger community who participated, wisdom offerings and practices and singing and sacred ceremony and diversity of exquisite offerings that are so rich in their gifts. And Hope, of course, has been a very important part of that for the last 4 years, bringing in these incredible voices of so many of her beloved companions in the seen and unseen worlds. And this year we were shown that actually it doesn't end in 2024, that the world needs more than ever this event to continue and to honor and celebrate and cultivate rest together as a global community for our personal, collective, and planetary benefit. So as Jan and I were weaving our way in this nomadic way of life that we've had for the last year, we landed up in Stroud and with a dear friend who invited us to spend some precious hours with Uma. And we didn't really know what to anticipate, but we were invited to her beautiful, beautiful sanctuary, her space that she has right next to her home, a room that you can see behind her, this exquisite field of rich, earthy wisdom and sacred objects. And the room is created as a sanctuary of rest. And so with blankets and pillows and beautiful and much beauty, Uma has created a space for a circle of people to gather to rest with an altar in the center. And Uma took us through the most beautiful soundscape of rest, inviting us with her deep, intimate wisdom and intricate understanding of rest that she has cultivated for 25 plus years into an experience of profound rest with these musical instruments that just took us into this journey of meeting rest in a profound new way. So I was so moved by this and enthralled by it, that as we approach the upcoming 7 days of rest, that we meet Uma, who has just in that week that we actually met her, brought a birthed book into the world. And Uma, I wonder if you're willing to show it, and you can talk about it afterwards. But I mean, this was the synchronicity, the orchestration, the beauty of it was, you know, really profound. So Uma has, you'll talk about your book, but I'll just say that our meeting with Uma, yeah, it had so many special pieces to it, because the vision that I had of people around the world holding space for rest as a deep healing moment for humanity and for all of life, Uma has had since she was a child. So I'm going to pass this over to Uma to share that our meeting from your perspective, but
Yes.
just to say that one of the great gifts for this event will be 2 yoga nidras a day, 2 of these soundscapes that Uma is going to be doing specifically for the participants of 7 days of rest. So we all get to experience this and to deepen our intimacy and our practice, our communion with rest through someone who has really, I couldn't ask for someone to offer a more profound experience of rest than Uma. So I'm very grateful.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. You must have felt like you met the goddess of rest.
That is exactly how I felt.
And considering that I always think of you as the goddess of rest, you know, the 2 sister goddesses have come together at last.
Oh, bless you.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you both. My goodness gracious, what a homecoming this must have been. So Uma, please tell us about yourself, and then you can tell us about your meeting with Shelley from your perspective.
Okay, well, I'm a devotee of the goddess of rest. Her name is Nidra Shakti. Nidra means sleep in Sanskrit, so that's our Indo-European language. And so, and Shakti is power. So Nidra Shakti is the power of rest. And I've been devoted to the power of rest for a very long time. She's a manifestation of like one of the great wisdoms that we have as humans. And the vision that Shelley spoke about is a vision of the entire species. So I do believe our species is fundamentally exhausted. Humanity is exhausted. We are a tired species as a result of many complex experiences, largely to do with the insanely inhuman machinery of imperial capitalism and colonialism that thereby hangs a big tail. So somehow we got to this exhausted state by running machinery that is very inhumane, and it doesn't suit the more than human world either. And so the vision I had as a tiny child actually was of the entire species resting all at the same time. I used to think, what would happen if everybody laid down on the earth? I mean, preferably outside on the earth so you can listen to the earth all at the same time. Supposing we all prayed together, supposing we all laid down and rested. Wow. And I spend a lot of time and I used to wonder, I would wonder about this like I'm in Stroud in the Cotswolds in England. As you can see, it's very cold. It gets dark at like 3:30 in the afternoon at this time of year, and it doesn't really get light again until 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's very dark and very wet. And on a winter's day, I would lie there in bed whilst people said you had to get up and go to school. And I think, what would happen if we all just stayed in our beds? You know, I think a lot of children think about this. But one of the things I discovered, because I had the good fortune to be introduced to yoga in 1969 when I was 4 years old. Oh. By someone who then didn't carry on with the yoga, but there you go. It was on the TV, so I got to do it. Was a practice. I discovered a practice that helps us as humans remember what it's like to be in that state. It's a threshold state. So it's resting, but you're not asleep. You actually know you're resting. So your body actually might be asleep, but your mind is usually kind of somewhere watching this. So it's a threshold, liminal state. And most humans, any human that's ever been asleep ever in our lives, will notice that. as something in between going to sleep and waking up. Like when you wake up in the morning, if you don't have an alarm and you don't have to jump out of bed, then you'll be in that state, and it's where all the magic happens, right?
That's in neurological terms, that's the theta.
It's actually really specifically in that state, the theta alpha border. It's not theta.
Okay.
It's like where theta and alpha meet.
Okay.
There's
like
a space.
20 hertz somewhere in there.
Yeah, that's where it meets. And when you're going to sleep, it's the other way. It's the alpha theta border. So one is hypnagogia. Hypnagogia is when you're waking up. Hypnagogia is when you're going to sleep. And hypnopompia is the alpha theta borders when you're waking up. And they're kind of distinct but similar, because one's alpha theta and the other one's theta alpha, but they're both like in the middle between those places, two things and one at the same time. And in that state, you can experience the connection to the place where all the poetry comes, you know, the place where all the great inventions comes, where everybody gets insights. We're all one at that point. And we also get, I believe, we get to hear the earth speaking, because we're no longer vertical, you know. And a lot of meditation, I've done a lot of yoga, it's very vertical. Yeah, this is like surrender. This is a very feminine approach to meditation. You lie down, you give up, you let the earth hold you. So I cultivated a relationship with this particular state as a writer. I've written 6 books, but also as someone who has ADHD. I have a PhD and I have ADHD. I claimed it as a qualification. So that means I have a lot of energy. So I don't really get tired, but then when I do, people can crash with it. So what I learned was that the skill of knowing how to get in that alpha theta alpha state, and sometimes other things happen. If you stay there long enough, you'll dip into delta, like deep rest. You won't know where you are. So you'll be in deep restorative space, but you might also get some rapid eye movement. You might dream. If you practice, you can actually notice all of those brainwave states. It's not one state.
Right.
It begins as alpha theta or theta alpha, but then it goes into lots of other things. So when Shelley showed up here in our temple to the wisdom goddesses, that's a whole other story. We train people how to help other humans be in that state. And in order to train people how to do that, obviously, you have to know how to be there yourself. And it's vital for people who've got very, very busy brains, because otherwise, you know, we go up in smoke. I would have gone up in smoke like 40 years ago if it wasn't for Yoga Nidra. So for me, it's a vital life skill, which is why I got really interested in the science, the poetry. And then when I wrote the encyclopedia, which was coming out just as Shelley arrived, like after classic, like 9 years in the process, but it's 25 years work. What I discovered in the process of research with that is a global network of indigenous practices that all bring us to the same state in different ways. Evidently, the Mexican Tolteca people, the Xhosa people in South Africa, the Maori, the Celts, the Sami, the Seneca, everywhere you went. And the particular tradition I work with, by virtue of my study and my married family, so my children's ancestors are Indian, my ancestors are Irish, but my children's ancestors are Indian. So kind of married into this sort of South Asian network and study program that's all about Yoga Nidra. So the South Asian variant of this form of like a trance-based resting alpha theta practice is called Yoga Nidra. And it's not yoga like, you know, shapes. It's yoga like lie down and be. So that's when Shelley showed up. That's what we've been doing for 25 years. And I have to say, Shelley, oh, you're the 7 days of rest people, because of course I had clocked that this was happening 7 years ago. And I said to the little tiny team I work with, don't you remember me saying we need to meet the 7 days of rest people? That's a brilliant idea. We should do the same thing, because that was our vision. So now we have 600 plus Yoga Nidras in 24 different languages. So my idea is that everyone could lie down in their mother tongue. So we have it in Irish and Welsh and Hindi and Levantine Arabic is in Palestinian Arabic. We've got it in Hebrew and French, Spanish, Italian, German, Russian, all of that stuff too. All the Indo-European languages. But my intention was to have it available when I can get the funding, you know, in every mother tongue, especially are minority languages, because in those indigenous languages that are being, stolen from people left, right, and center, there's something really deeply connected to the earth. In all the different we even have it in different dialects, so you can hear it whether you want it in Massachusetts English or whether you want it in nice Cotswold language, like lay down, relax, all that kind of thing. So that's how it was. So it was a kind of meeting made in heaven, and we sat around my kitchen table, and I cried because I was like, "Oh, it's you, Shelley. You're the 7 days of rest people, and you're sitting right here in my kitchen." So we're offering, as Shelley said, morning. We often do it like in Sanskrit. There's a beautiful term. It's called a sandhi. A sandhi is a join. So it's the joining places, the turning points. Like in a figure of 8, it's the turning point in the middle. And so at dusk and at dawn, in those special times, it's a really beautiful time to meditate, but it's a lovely time just to be restful. So we're going to offer, well, myself and my husband together, we'll be training people here, but we'll be going possibly, if it doesn't rain, out into the yew tree grove where we live, or in by our fireside to offer little short practices. It's like 20 minutes where everyone can lie down. We will be doing it in English. Possibly we might have some other European languages there if we're up for it, and a little bit of Irish, but yeah, morning and evening yoga nidras for 7 days. But that's our offering. So we're so happy to be connected. It felt like part of the great intelligence of life at work.
I should say so. My goodness, there could not be a match better made in heaven.
Yeah, it was a joy, total joy to be here and to be with Shelley and Jana and connected into the flow of the waters, because yeah, we're right on an incredible little network of natural holy springs and rivers and waterfalls. So we did a pilgrimage around and we rested, and very special. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. My goodness. Well, that's really exciting. And so let me just technical stuff, that what we will have the link to the 7 days of rest website where everybody can see what the programs are and what times they are. You'll have to do the time conversion. For those of us on Turtle Island, which I was told by Uma today is where I live, and many of my cohorts live here in North America somewhere, Canada and the US, and we are on Turtle Island, according to the Seneca people. So those of us who are here will need to do the time conversion. But I think it's okay if we're doing your morning yoga nidra practice at, whatever hour. Yours, I guess we'd get your evening one at about noon.
That's right. Yeah, depending on whether you're on Pacific time.
Right.
The Pacific time, it usually fits up quite sweetly. I lived on Pacific time for quite some while. Beautiful river. And when I was teaching in the mornings, that was the evening here, because we're on Greenwich Mean Time on
So
British.
they will be recorded for those of us to catch up if, if the time doesn't work out, because it would be nice to do them, as you suggest, at daybreak and sunset.
Yeah, because that's a beautiful recalibration. Because one of the little prayers we have is that by restoring rhythmic cycles in these resting bodies here, we're restoring rhythmic cycles in the body of the earth.
That is so key. That is so key, Uma. And I know Shelley is on that same wavelength as well. And I sometimes get the question about really what good does it do if I'm doing all this work on myself and, I don't see any change happening out in the world. And I was like, okay, well, first of all, most of us have lost the perceptivity to be able to discern whether changes are happening or not, unless they're really bold. And usually it takes a group to make something really bold, not always, but often. It's a matter of understanding that the fields are not separate, that everything we do in our own field affects many fields that we don't even know about around us, 360 degrees. We're a sphere, right? We're a toroidal field. And it requires trust that exists, that there is a unifying field in general. And if you're just thinking that that might be the case, that's not the same as trust. Trust is a whole-bodied, whole field, both feet in, toes curled on the edge of the cliff. Yes, this is what I believe. Once that is surrendered to, once we surrender to trust, then all of these things make sense. And we realize we're not just doing it for ourselves. We are doing it for ourselves, and we must do it for ourselves. But it is having not only the ripple effect in our fields currently, but down the road, 7 generations.
Mm.
And it may take that long. We don't know. But what else are we here for? What else are we here for? We're here to do our part. And I just want to say one more thing that you talked about, and I know Shelley has talked about this too, and then I'll be quiet and you guys can talk. But you talked about how humanity is exhausted. And I think about, if we really stand back on the wide perspective of how long humanity has even been here, let's say in just this iteration, we know there are previous iterations, but in this iteration, it kind of reminds me of toddlers who don't get a nap, and they rev and rev and rev, until they absolutely crash. And as they rev up, they become harder and harder to deal with. And they don't listen well to your motherly or fatherly instructions. And it sort of just reminded me of that as you were talking. And really what they really needed was a good nap at 4 o'clock or at 3 o'clock or whatever time. Anyway, so back to you all. Let's tell me, I want to hear about your book, Uma. But Shelley, let's go back to you, and let's go back to the 7 days of rest and how this year is presenting itself differently than it has in the past.
So for the last 7 years, each year I would go into meditation, receive clarity as to a particular theme of the year, and also the themes of each of the days. So there were beautiful themes that came through, from 7 days of rest and radiant diversity, 7 days of rest and radical healing, or 7 days of rest and sacred renewal, 7 days of rest. This year it was reweaving wholeness. This year, which will be the 8th year, which is the infinity, will actually just be 7 days of rest. And the way it's almost more than the sum of all the parts that were, it's recalibrating with the wholeness of what we've experienced. And it's offering an opportunity to focus very much on rest in whatever way feels right. And so it's about honoring and celebrating and cultivating rest as an essential foundation for the healing and thriving of humanity and Earth and all of life. And just that celebrating rest, that honoring rest, that reconnecting with the consciousness of rest, for me, it's, with all I've done over the last 7 years, it's coming to me in a whole new way as this exquisite intelligence consciousness that is inviting us into deep remembrance and communion. And sometimes we'll think of rest as stopping something that we're doing, or, just taking a break or going on holiday or whatever. And I think the kind of rest that Uma invites us into, and that is calling us, is to feel into what it's like to recalibrate with one's natural rhythms, with one's natural intelligence, with Mother Earth's intelligence. It's so deep because, as you say, Hope, we've been so busy. Everything in our society is oriented to greater and greater stress and greater disconnect from those natural rhythms. So a toddler at that age still somehow knows how to rest. and they'll wake up the next morning with the same amount of energy. But as we build trauma and rigidity over time, we've lost that capacity to fall into that most natural state.
Good
And
point.
we're driven
Yeah.
with all of this armor and all of the tension that we're holding
Yes.
to more and more and more. And the messages that we're getting are fear and do and scarcity, and it's everywhere.
Yes.
And the natural, the habitual norms and culture of society is built on something that is antithetical, fundamentally antithetical to rest.
Yes.
The times people get up to go to work, the whole way of going to work, everything that we value in terms of success, all of this, it's just antithetical to nature's rhythms. And when we actually see that as a vortex that pulls us deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, this hamster wheel that we can't get off, and you actually consciously say, I'm reversing this. I'm actually going to dare to face the void, because I think in some ways, rest invites us into an unfamiliar place. And we're so addicted to this adrenaline that comes from being busy. And so the idea of rest, to go deeply and meet rest, is not always attractive to people. Can be a little bit, and then there'll be I'll find something to be busy with. But to actually kind of reorient and face rest in and say, thank you for, help me to meet you. And to every time there's this urge to wind up, to actually wind down and to breathe and to soften and to breathe and to soften and to slow down and to empty. And, there's something that happens in the healing vortex, because you're letting go of a lot of that which is not intrinsic to your nature and to your well-being. And I find that as I practice this deeper and deeper and deeper, and learn from rest and ask rest to show me the way, and ask my body to show me the way, and get inspired from people like Uma and others who have practiced this, and the breath, and to honor it, to honor the intelligence of rest, because we have totally violated it. We've totally violated, I think, that foundational restorative healing wisdom that is our birthright. We've devalued it in idealizing that which is not rest, the busyness, or the superficial holiday that is more about seeing and doing, and going out for meals and whatever ways we holiday. But this is a different sense of connectedness. And just from my own experience, imagining you are communing with this intelligence, and you're asking her to show you what that means, and softening into it and gentling into it. To me, it's the experience is more and more profound as I go deeper. Inviting everybody over the 7 days to, as Hope says, understand that these 7 days are a gift to ourselves personally, to do something for ourselves. And in doing that, we are not only giving something to the whole, because as we release our stuff, it makes it easier for the whole to release, but we're also being supported by the global community that's doing it. And I think there's going to be quite a lot of the Yoga Nidra network who will participate, and held in their practice, there's a field that is going to be very strong and inviting us to rest into it. So, and in that, you can just imagine this collective resting that allows all of that is not absolutely essential to us to dissolve itself into the ether, and to say, release it, and not have to go back to it at the end of the 7 days. And at the end of the 7 days, be more and more able to integrate rest into every aspect of our life, and not only disconnect it, say, okay, now I'm going to work and then I'm going to rest, but to hold that practice of rest in how we breathe, and in our slowing down, and in what we value, and in everything else that we do.
Yes, I really, really love that distinction that it's not just rest when you're lying down, it's a restful approach to life. It's a realizing we have a choice. You know, we don't have to rev with the rest of the engine that is always going to go at full tilt boogie. We can actually unplug from that and go at a pace that is more appropriate for us. Of course, that changes over time. This idea that, you know, there's a mindfulness became sort of the accepted generic term. And that is not dissimilar, but I like the idea of this tapping into the intelligence of a rest, because it will speak to us, and it does, and we ignore it. We ignore it. But the idea, and I'm going to just bring the wave in here, because the wave has its own intelligence, and it's got a piece of it that is about this restful state. When the water is running slowly like a trickling brook, the whole system goes, ah. And as you say, when you go into a situation that is primed for revving and anxiety, if we choose to stay in the calming, restful state, the wavy state, then we don't get hooked up with all of that. It's almost like, oh, we can now observe it, but we're not in it. We're not pulled in. We get to stay in our own wavy flow state. And that's a waking state, you know, that we have at our fingertips at all times. But whether it's the wave that appeals, or thinking of rest's intelligence and imagining the goddess of rest that Uma was talking about, and I want to hear more about that. You know, there are choices that we can make. So Uma, talk to us about the goddess of rest.
Well, I'm always happy to speak about her because it's an immense power in the tradition where she comes from. Her name, Nidra Shakti, is mentioned in very ancient texts. I mean, texts that were written down a long time after they were sung, like in the Mahabharata, the great epic poem of India. No, it's like the oldest, longest poem in the world, you know. And then in the Devi Mahatmya, which is the victory of the great goddess. So that was written down like in the 5th century, but it was chanted in pieces for a long time. So her presence is acknowledged right down. If you look at the stories of Gilgamesh and things, the idea of like standing up against the power of rest is a folly. It's shown that you can't do it. She is an immensely powerful goddess. She's a manifestation. Shakti is power. She is a manifestation not just of the power of sleep, but of the naturally arising rhythms of life that we mess with at our peril. There's a whole lot of stories in the front of the encyclopedia that I wrote that are about her. She's embodied as an entity, a female, quite imperious entity actually. And there's lots of amazing stories, a bit like our Sleeping Beauty story in the West, a story of a princess who's the wife of a prince who won't go to sleep. And she gets put to sleep because her husband like does a deal with the goddess of rest. He's called Lakshman. He says, I'm not going to go to sleep. I've got this vigil to keep, but my wife can sleep for me. So she kind of gets, but she has to sleep for 14 years. You know, that's the deal. And then the moment he gets back, because he's stayed awake for 14 years, he has to go to sleep. So that's the story of Urmila, the sleeping princess. But there's loads of stories like this. Okay, I've got half a dozen of them in the front of the book to show this ancient rooted sense that she manifests, and is very unusual when you look at the Greco-Roman pantheon, like Morpheus, and you have these masculine goddesses of sleep, gods of sleep. That's actually quite rare around the world. Most of the entities or the divine beings or the ways that we personify this intelligence are usually in some kind of feminine sense, that she sings you a lullaby and you can't keep your eyes open, even if you are that toddler that's like, no, I will never sleep, I don't want to sleep, and you're so wired that you don't know how tired you are. And I think that's an extremely accurate representation of our addictive culture. Our culture is addicted to doing. But there is also, I think, a really important note to kind of bear in mind, that we consider this entity, you know, Nidra Shakti in the South Asian tradition, but she manifests in quite a lot of different other ways around the world. And this idea that if you choose to go up against her, basically you're going against nature. Like everything has to sleep. Everything that's alive sleeps. Trees, they sleep at some point. Daffodils, they sleep. Everything sleeps. There'll be points. It's seasonal. We live on a planet that's spinning. It can't be any other ways. There's going to be periods when we need to rest. There's circadian rhythms, and we've overridden even those basic rhythms with the machinery of capitalism that insists that people have to, and that's a very recent idea, that people will sleep 8 hours straight. It's a totally absurd notion. Most humans don't do that. We sleep in 90-minute cycles. It's perfectly normal to surface, recognize that, and go back. We have first, so I looked into pre-industrial sleep patterns and ancient goddesses of rest, and came to the same conclusion as the two of you, really, which is that we are an exhausted species, and our exhaustion has pushed us beyond our capacity to remember even how to sleep. People have forgotten. They get into places where they can't sleep, and the insomnia and the sleep disorders become so severe that they literally cannot remember how to sleep. People don't know how to downregulate their nervous systems anymore.
Right.
And so what Yoga Nidra will do, if you practice it, I mean, it's very therapeutic. I think it's also a very profound horizontal meditation state, but it's also a way to help people remember what it feels like to rest. So a lot of the language I use is like, welcome back, welcome home to your resting self. What would it be like if your resting self actually got to meet your waking self? I mean, how would they get along? The resting self.
Interesting. Yes. It's kind of, that plays a little bit into what Shelley was saying about the discomfort with being in the void of doing. And what are you going to find there? You know, oh, I'm uncomfortable. I have feelings that I haven't been paying attention to, and they're all coming up here. Why do I want to cry when I lie down to rest? You know,
people often, all I need to say is, there's nothing you need to do. There isn't anywhere you need to go. There are no deadlines to meet. That's one of the intros. There's nothing that is need to be achieved. You're whole and here and perfect just as you are. And you don't need to do anything. You can just be. When you actually, and you can't do it wrong because you're not doing anything. People just burst into tears because that might have been the first time literally in their lives that they've ever heard it's not just okay to rest, but like, you're fine just doing that. And I think it's important to see that in histories of oppression and slavery and indentured servitude around the world, like if you slept, you were dead. There are people, my ancestors amongst them, who were either in indentured servitude or they were slaves. And the moment that you paused to rest, that was it, you were done. So there's very important work being done at the intersection of social justice and the rest paradigm by the NAP ministry, who I would like to honor and name, Tricia Hersey, who lives in Georgia, who's working at that intersection of liberation theology and social justice. And she's the NAP bishop, and her message is like, we rest because our ancestors were denied rest. They died for want of, and for other reasons, you know. So I think that work, her book Rest is Resistance, is a manifesto, much shorter and more accessible than mine, but like to honor that work that's being done as reparation for generations of violent oppression that denies people sleep. And the entire species is exhausted for fundamentally the same kind of reason, but certain groups of people are like, have been so denied rest that it's impacted on, intergenerational problems of health and trauma and systemic illnesses that manifest in all kinds of metabolic disorders. There's a whole set of things going on. But underneath all of this, people remember what it feels like to rest. And they feel maybe guilty or afraid of it, as you said. And that I do feel that when we as a collective rest, I sense we're a circle. I use the term a circle of belonging. It's a very primal experience. because it takes us back to a really primal experience in our nervous systems when we were not the top predator on the planet, right? We still aren't, but like when we think we are now, but like when we would all rest together around a fire. Now, the humans, you couldn't rest easily if everybody went to sleep. You'd want 1 or 2 people to stay awake to make sure your blankets didn't catch fire and to make sure the predators didn't come and eat you up, you know? So the sense of being together, being kind of awake and hearing a voice, which will be like my voice or whoever's doing the Yoga Nidra, taps into a very profoundly comforting sense that some people had as children. I remember having a lovely experiences as to falling asleep under tables, and there'd be gatherings of family, and maybe there'd be a party, and you'd hear them all, and you'd know they were all there, so you could go to sleep because they'd mind you, you know. So that, but not everybody had that experience as a child of falling asleep when you had a bedtime story read to you. So whether you had that beneficial experience or whether you didn't, somehow deep in our back end, in our primal remembrance, is this wonderful recognition that our nervous systems do know. They remember how to rest. And the earth, I feel she takes a huge sigh of relief, because the horizontal humans, we really don't cause any trouble. It's the vertical humans that cause all the trouble, even the ones that are sitting up. And all the people in our legislative bodies and in major corporations making decisions day after day in states of exhaustion. Nobody decides anything sensible when they are tired. They should, I'd suggest in our Houses of Parliament, for example, in England, and everybody goes and has a few pints before they vote, you know? But wouldn't it be wonderful if everywhere, in every house of, you know, seat of government, they say, no, we're all going to take a little rest now, everybody. Settle down. We've got an important job to do. We have to vote on behalf of our people. So let us rest together, and then we'll rise up. One of my colleagues has a beautiful term, rise up rested. Karen Brody, she runs a radical stall of like feminist rest, you know, God bless her. She and, you know, so many good people doing this work. And you rise up rested, and then you vote for the right thing, you know. You vote for peace.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that idea. Oh my gosh. And the book Rest is Resistance. I want to make sure. Now, speaking of books, let us see your book, your beautiful new book.
I have two books about Yoga Nidra. One is a big one and one is a little one. So the little one is like, you make Yoga Nidra easy. It's a very small book, you know, so that's a nice way to start. But that's like the baby one of this big mama one. So this is the one that was coming out just when Shelley sat at my kitchen table. And it's called Nidra Shakti, The Power of Rest. And it's an illustrated encyclopedia of Yoga Nidra. And it's rather beautiful. It's got a lot of beautiful images of like how we connect with experiences of guiding our awareness around our body. There's many components to Yoga Nidra, but this looks at its indigenous history. It reclaims the term Yoga Nidra for the honoring of the goddess of rest. So it's a reclamation, and it has a kind of decolonial lens, because it goes underneath a lot of contemporary schools of Yoga Nidra that, you know, they trademark this practice and say, this is how you do it. And I'm like, listen, this is a human birthright. We all know how to do it. So I got all the lovely pictures. It's full of illustrations. We had 7 artists working on it.
Wow.
I mean, it's 25 years work, but that's why it's so big. But it's also the work of so many people. Over 9 years, I put it together with the artists and testimonials and loads of like Yoga Nidra saved my life stories. People who had brain traumas, people who were, you know, injuries, that were struck by lightning. They're free divers who used Yoga Nidra. They gave birth they carried through menopause. I do a lot of work around cyclical wisdom and menstrual health. A lot of people who use all the different ways, covering from surgery, from chemo. So there's all those kind of stories. So many people's, it's an act of great generosity. So there's a lot of copies gone out to say thank you to everybody who helped me with it, because they honestly believed it would never happen, because I couldn't do it tired, you see. I had to keep resting. And the more I rested, the more she said, you know, so it's got an encyclopedia, it's got a medicine of Yoga Nidra chapter that's got 87 research papers, you know, reviewed, but then it's got history and all this mythology and this wonderful stories. So that's what it's about. So thank you for letting me share.
Really, I'm going to thank you on behalf of the collective. We thank you, because this is what a labor of love and patience. And congratulations.
Thank you.
I have a little tiny book, and it took me about 10 years to get that out.
Oh,
So
it does, because they distill all your wisdom, Hope. You know, it takes a lot to make it.
I know.
Share it with them.
But what you've produced is just miraculous. So I can't wait to read it. Can we get it just anywhere, or is there a
Oh,
particular?
you see, that was the thing. I can send you a copy, Hope. I'll send you a copy. But if
But
anybody
I
else
want people to be able to get it.
you go to the Yoga Nidra Network. So the Yoga Nidra Network is a collective, and it's yoganidranetwork.org. And we have a little shop in there, and there's a nice bit where and we'll ship it to you wherever in the world where you are. And then you get all these audio downloads, and you get all the transcripts. There's 108 different transcripts. People donated their transcripts. So I collated people from all over the world. There's so that's where you get it. So I didn't want anyone else to get a hold of it. And because we published it ourselves, it's printed in Cornwall, in England, and it's a community outreach project. So yeah, you can't get it on those large retailing operations that I won't name.
Okay.
You can get it from the yoganidranetwork.org.
I'm just putting it in the chat here and making sure I've
bless
spelled it
you.
right.
I'll have a
Nidra is Nidra.
Nidra Yoga. That's it.
That's
Sounds.
what I have. Okay, that's what I thought. I was just wondering if there was an H in there. Sometimes
No,
there's
that's it. yoganidranetwork.org. That is exactly the place.
Great.
A little shop
Great.
up there, and then you can listen to the audios, and even the little book. If the big book feels a bit much, the little book is so sweet because it's got a little sleepy lady on the front, but that has 42 audio downloads. So people can. My intention is to share the practice, because you can read about it, and it all came in poetry. So I really appreciated Shelley's beautiful meditations, because when you get into that state, the goddess speaks in rhythm and rhyme. And the original forms in the South Asian tradition of this particular one aspect of the practice always comes in rhythm and rhyme. And that's how I know it's her. That's all her, restoring rhythmic cycles in this resting body here, restoring rhythmic cycles in the body of the earth. So it has a rhythm to it. And rhyme. So it's nice to hear these things. And then the music over the years kind of came in. There's all these cute little chimes.
Oh, I have those. I love those.
This is so there's all the different elements.
Yes.
And sometimes the recordings have natural sounds with them. Like I did one for Shelley and for the 7 Days of Rest community that has a stream running in the background. I've done ones by oceans. Yeah, we did one for, there's a whole body of work. It's a kind of poetic form if you take it that way. I mean, it can be reduced and extracted and commodified, but if you go back to the roots, you'll find this abundant wellspring of poetry. And I think people speak in their way. To me, I think it's a kind of lullaby. So then people ask what I do. I say, I like channel cosmic naps for people by like lullabies, basically. The way you would, I mean, I've had 3 children and I look after 3 elders. And so, I'm often like trying to calm people into their sleepy state. So that's a global phenomenon, isn't it? Sing songy voices. There's no need to fret. Now everything's here and we're holding you tight, and you can, that hush little baby, don't you cry. It's like that. It's very feminine kind of a thing, very maternal. Bless her.
Beautiful, beautiful, Uma. And I just, going back to Shelley, I can imagine what a boon to have someone have this degree of, this depth and breadth of understanding. I mean, that just must feel so good to you, having really slogged this out on your own for quite a while, you and Jan. And wow, beautiful, beautiful.
It's extraordinary. It's a gift to us. It's a gift to humanity. It feels so timely.
Mm-hmm.
We're at this precipice at the moment of this culmination of all of that trauma vortex and unrest. And as we're just moving, as this portal opens into this new possibility of radical healing for the whole in ways that bring our collective wisdom to the whole, we're bringing our unique gifts, with the infinitywave and this incredible wisdom of rest. We're all bringing our pieces to the whole to nourish the whole and be nourished by the whole. And the way in which rest is presencing herself now feels so orchestrated as a foundation for everything else. So it's almost that we couldn't have met earlier. Before this, these 7 years, I was just asking rest to begin to reveal herself to me, because I was not someone that was familiar with rest. It was a whole thing when, suddenly I had to do the 7 days of rest. What does that mean? And begin to do these, ongoing meditations to ask what wants to come through and to create the conditions. And people have access to all of those 7 years on the website. There's so much richness from each of those years. You can do healing retreats for yourself, rest retreats, through different lenses, and go back and explore the richness. And this year, meeting Uma, it felt very whole. Like it's almost like nothing else needed to to be said about rest, because she's integrated so much, it's all processed, it's all gifted to the world in such a distilled way. And then we can begin to listen to the diverse others, humans and other than humans, that you bring through, and begin to collect their wisdom. I mean, I have a sense that those that know rest and have watched humans in the unrest and are supporting them in returning to rest, that will speak through you during the 7 days, is going to be a very profound experience for all. So I'm really looking forward to that, because what you've offered through these last 4 years is this extraordinary experience, supported by Merlin and by the vast repertoire of beings that he brings in, and that you bring in, and that come in to support this process. It enriches it so much, because we begin to feel ourselves connected to all realms, more and more connected, and that this gift of rest is not only a human intervention at this time, a human remembrance. It goes way beyond that, to Mother Earth herself, but also to all of those other than human beings and other dimensional beings that are in their fractal way working with those same principles that honor rest as a foundation for creation.
Yes. Oh, so beautifully said. And
medicine.
So beautifully said, Shelley. And you've been such a pioneer and courageous to just step out and go, I don't really know what I'm doing, but we're going to do this, and I'm going to listen. And you've listened so beautifully. And every year it grows and grows. And I think this timeliness that you pointed to, it's kind of intriguing, because we are ramped up again from last year. And it's almost like we needed the combination now of you two, the more of a foundation of this restful state, or this restful even mindset, just the awareness, restful awareness, the more of a foundational state that can be created. It's almost like it's counterbalancing more of the chaotic energy above. So it was actually necessary that you two come together. We need to pull in all the troops, because we're going through, what's it?
The three of us.
I'm honored to be.
And all of those amazing other beings, people that are offering their gifts to the whole. And
yeah, this is actually foundational to the transitions that we're going through, individually and collectively. And medicinal is the word that comes in. It's, wow. I'm really excited to see how this is going to unfold, and who is going to want to speak through me and through others. I'm really, really curious now, because I'm feeling the import of it. I'm feeling this essential aspect of it, and I'm excited, and I'm going to start right now preparing and opening the channel. Come on in, folks, whoever needs to speak to this very important moment, in the first week of January. Well, I think, anybody have any last words to say?
Yeah, I just really want to say thank you to you, Hope, for bringing us together. It's been so wonderful to share with Uma and with you this this moment. It's been incredibly precious. It's like holds it in such a beautiful, loving space, and really seeds the event with this coming togetherness and this invitation for everybody to freely participate and to know that your participation makes a difference to the whole. There's, you're very welcome. It's a free, open event. There's nothing that you can do it all in your own time, whatever, choose what you want. Very simple offerings from people around the world. And not only that, but just this invitation beyond the offerings of participating to slow down, to find spaces for yourself, to eat lightly, to move lightly, to be tender with yourself and gentle, and to invite that intimacy with yourself through rest, and with rest through your communion with it, your invitation, your commitment to relearn to remember. So thank you for participating in that. It, as Hope said, it makes a difference to the field. Each one of us that unplugs makes that pull to the that business as usual less forceful. It releases it. It weakens that pull until we collectively let it go and really move back into coming from that place.
Yes, 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 yes. And so that we're available to that rhythm that Uma was talking about, a much more natural rhythm. Before I go to you, Uma, one sec, I want to say it's 7daysofrest.org. Is that where you'd like people to go?
7days-of-rest.org.
7days-of-rest.org. Got it. All right. So that's in the chat for everybody. Hopefully I did that right. But I'll be sending out links anyway in my newsletters and all of that. But in case either of you want to use this interview as well, then it's there for whoever else you want to share with. Uma, did you want to say a few words before we?
There was only one word I really wanted to say, because when we speak about like restoration and reparation and remembering, this is a rematriation. Like it's an offering of our bodies to the earth, to rematriate, to back into the matrix of the essential intelligence of our planetary conscious that we're all part of. So that it's an act of rematriation, and that it seems really radical, and it's so important that I'm just going to emphasize what you said at the beginning, that we think that one act of an individual doing that, but in a collective, like a kind of coherent field of resting of this kind, of the 7 days of rest, I believe is immensely powerful. And I've observed that. It's my observation and experience that over years of holding collective circles of belonging where people rest, is that we have an immensely beneficial kind of resonance effect, because it's a rematriation, and that's what's being called for. That's how we move away. It doesn't require anybody's approval. It doesn't need to be in opposition to anything. It's just the thing that we do that restores our rhythmic cycles, and that restores the rhythmic cycles that the earth is showing to us all the time. So I offer it as an act of rematriation, and I'm honored and delighted to be in connection with you wonderful people. And thank you so much for inviting me here. It's so beautiful to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Shelley, do you want to say something?
Yeah, just there's one gift that Uma's already given us that we can put a link. You can also put a link to that. She's done a beautiful introduction gift to the 7 days of rest as a yoga nidra that went out, and we can put a link to it in your underneath the Zoom as well.
You want to give it to me now? I can put it in the chat if you know it.
It has the voice of a stream in a wood that's called the Heavens Wood. I mean, that's literally what it's called. It's called the Heavens Wood, and it's high up in the Cotswolds, and you can hear the voice of the stream, and then the voice of my voice, and the human sounds, and the birds, and the chimes. So it's quite a special gift that specifically for our listeners here. Everybody who's listening in is welcome to have a listen in.
If you have a link to that, I could put it right here.
Is it easy for you to find that link, Uma? Or
Actually I can, because it's on our site. If you bear with me, I can just pop it into the chat, and then you've got it there, haven't you? So
yes,
that's quite handy.
you put it in the chat. That would be perfect. What a lovely thing. Oh, I can't wait to hear that.
I'm doing that now. There we go. I have to find my own. There we are.
In the meantime,
I've got a very long version of it that I can put in.
Okay.
I don't know if you've got the short version, but here's something.
Here we go. I found it. It's called The Heavens Waterfall, Wild Yoga Nidra, Restoring Rhythmic Cycles in the Body of the Earth. It's basically saying all those things. But you just found it. We found the same thing.
Beautiful. Well, 2 is better than 1, so we're happy. Listen, I feel like I could sit around and chat with you around a fire for hours and hours and hours, and maybe someday we'll do that. But for now, thank you both so much. I know it was not easy to find a time, but we did. And I know that everybody who watches this is just going to be so blessed and come to new understandings about rest and all its permutations and why it's so important. So thank you, my infinite wisdom guests. I love you, and we will connect in January.
Thank you so much, Hope. So much love to you and to you, Shelley. Bye-bye.
Thank you both. Thank you.